crossed over onto the English side of the border. Thankfully I haven't been chased out by men with pitchforks so far, and I just want to show another little interesting bit of history. Just one thing, as an aside, the old saw pit. Have you ever heard of the term, well, you would have heard of the term underdog. In a saw pit, you had literally obviously a pit, one man in the pit holding one end of the saw, and the man on top holding the other end of the saw. The person in the pit who was pulling down on the saw, he was known as the underdog, because that was the horriblest position to be in. You're sweaty and you get basically all the sawdust coming over you. So as an aside, there we go, that's the origins of the term the underdog. It's the man in the bottom of a saw pit. Now, the reason I'm here, a bit of folklore, pretty much based in fact. Let's talk about John Winter. It's the English Civil War, and John Winter is being chased by parliamentarians because he is a royalist. So he's being chased on his horse, and apparently he comes to this point and there's a gap in the hedge. So he thinks, I can make a quick diversion. I'll just check there's no cars coming. So sees the gap in his hedge, takes a turn, rides his horse along here. He keeps going, there's some trees, and he jumps the trees. Bit of a mistake, because that's apparently what he jumped into. What we're looking at there, he jumped into he ended up in the river, and apparently himself and the horse survived, which I find quite amazing. And he swam to safety in that direction, probably about a mile or so, down to Chepstow Castle. So I'm now on the English side of the border, and what we're looking at is the River Wye. It curves its way obviously around this bend here, up here, heads back up that way. Where my finger is there, if you're on the high ground up on that ridge and you look down, you can actually see an outline in the ground of a leper colony. Fantastic view, very popular with people rock climbing. So let's zoom in. Every time I come here, this part gets more and more eroded. I haven't been here for a few years. That's probably double the size of what it was last time I came here. So eventually the River Wye is going to cut through that and take a shortcut through there, and then this part will probably end up being silted up. The River Wye, as I mentioned before, is tidal. The water's going out into the Severn Estuary. Very muddy. One of Britain's premier salmon rivers back in the day. Yeah, very good salmon fishing. Quite often you'll see, a bit further upstream, but you'll see otters and occasionally seals if you're lucky. In Tinton I remember sat outside one night, outside the pub by the river, having a beer and just watching an otter on his back eating a fish just floating down the river. Fantastic. So over in that direction there would be Tinton. The cliff section over there is actually an old quarry, and again that's, I'll zoom in a bit, that's very popular with rock climbers. Oh, too much zoom, one hand shake. Let's zoom back out, there we go. Might be opportunity, actually, or might be opportune I should say, to talk about accents, because I noticed a few people have picked up on accents in reaction to the videos. Living here on the border, as I do, our accent and pronunciation of Welsh words, it's bizarre. We've got the Forest of Dean on one side, which is very strong rural Gloucestershire, a bit like that. And then you've got proper Wales, where it depends on how deep you go into Wales, but you might find down in Carmarthenshire people may be talking like this and saying things like, all right, but... And then you've got the Newport and the Valleys accent. Trellick and the border accent, it really is a mismatch of all sorts of things. So some locals, you wouldn't know they're Welsh because you think, oh, they've got a Gloucestershire accent, but no, they've picked it up from Gloucestershire. A friend of mine, he comes in the pub with his father. If you talk to his father, he's from the Forest of Dean, from Colford, so he's very much like proper forester. He talk like that. but actually he originates from Newport down in South Wales, so he's moved up into Gloucestershire and picked up the Gloucestershire accent. Pronunciation of words, I mean, little giveaways. I mean, I will say saucepan, not saucepan. I will say saucepan, which is the Welsh sort of pronunciation of it. Some others picked up on the pronunciation of Cymru, Cymru, Cymraeg, Cymraeg. Again, on the borders here, we tend to pronounce it as Cymru, Croeso I Cymru, and Cymraeg, as opposed to Cymraeg. It's just a border thing. Also, not forgetting, also to the north of where we are, we have Herefordshire, which is another rural accent, but with a hint of sort of West Midlands, a bit like that, a little bit Brummy like. So again, that influences the accent around here. So don't judge people from the borders by their accent, because it really is very screwed up. Like I said, we pick and mix from a lot of different, I suppose, different influences around us. And interestingly, whilst we live, say, my village of Trellick, 2 miles over the border in Wales, we are very proudly Welsh. But people will say, "I'm off to Wales tomorrow." Well, why are you saying that? We are already in Wales. So yeah, truly bizarre. Come to rugby, well, Wales v England, Wales for me every single time. If you go in my local pub, if the Six Nations rugby is on, and it's, say, a Wales-England game, predominantly the people in the pub will be wearing Brains rugby t-shirts, Welsh Rugby Union t-shirts, but also you'll get rugby shirts. You'll also get English people wearing English rugby shirts, but we all just get on. It's that thing of sort of rubbing shoulders with our neighbours. My accent is pretty much RP, received pronunciation. It's not, God, I wouldn't think it's got any real accent to me, so no matter where I am, people don't tend to know my origins. And also I tend to speak, doing these videos, a little bit clearer by sort of speaking in received pronunciation, purely because I'm narrating a video. But yeah, I can vary a little bit. Depends on where I am. If I maybe go down into Wales, I might soften my accent slightly and pronounce words a little bit differently. But generally, this is me, received pronunciation. So yeah, it's a little bit of history of accents. I'm not going to walk onto the edge of there, because literally it is a straight down drop. But let's have a little walk up here and just see if there's another viewpoint. I think there is. Let's keep walking. There we go. Come out onto this rocky outcrop here. Again, I'm not going to go too close to the edge. Where are we? That's where I was a minute ago. Fantastic view of that house up on the cliff there. Panning round, that's the view we were looking at. And then the River Wye does a straight run as it heads off into Chepstow. Little bit about the River Wye, and particularly the Severn Estuary. The Severn Estuary has got the second highest tidal rise and fall in the whole of the world. The top place being taken by the Bay of Fundy in Canada, and right close behind it is the Severn Estuary. At this point, a little bit further on where it flows into the estuary, on the high tides, the high tides can be 14 metres high. So that's roughly 45 feet. So 45 feet top and bottom. When that is in full flow, it is truly awesome, but bloody scary. I'd say probably the water's flowing out at about 30 miles an hour. At the moment, this is the tide going out. If we were to wait, you would really see the drop, and then how little water there would actually be left in the river here. And then obviously equally on on the incoming tide, river's heading up that way, and it fills up incredibly quick. So there we have winter sleep.